Hello, folks. Happy Friday. It's Mike at MoparPro.com. I wanted to discuss sending units today. So basically, people call me, they buy sending units from me. All these sending units are of my manufacturer. I mean, I don't make them here. We have a specialty instrument company make these sending units based on my technical drawings and the original parts. I just wanted to go over with you how sending units operate. So basically, there seems to be a lot of guessing, and listen, I'm not the expert, I'm not claiming to be. I just have studied this so much, I can basically nail it down for you in a few minutes, and I hope you would like to listen to it because it's really an interesting situation how these work. So basically, these are the factory gauges out of, random different Mopars 30s, 40s, 50s cars. Right now we're focusing on, 30s, 40s, 50s. This is not the 60s or the 70s. This is pretty much Chrysler in those years. Now, so what happens is the factory set a certain ohm rating. Ohms are basically, and I'm not a scientist, I'm not trying to be, I'm just trying to explain it to you the way I understand it. The ohms are a certain flow of electricity. It's a number, whether it's 0 or 100. Let's say we're going to stay within 0 and 100. Now, basically every gauge from the factory, this is what it is. When you put power to this gauge, and I might be saying it not 100%, I'm not a scientist like I've said to you, but basically when you put power to these gauges are wound. There's a winding inside, and they basically read a certain level of current. So what happens is when the sending unit sits in the tank, and the tank is empty, it puts out a certain amount of resistance. The ohms are at a certain number. As the gas increases, the float goes up. Now the float, that would be full. It reads another number. So basically, the sending unit is matched to the gauge. So when they make the gauge, they know at empty how much flow of electricity it is, and then they know when it goes to full, and then in the middle, and then so on and so forth. So basically, the sending unit talks to the gauge. Now, what happens is that when your sending unit gets old, this is what happens. Either the cork or the float, whatever float you have on there, disintegrates. Now it's not working, it just stays at empty. So if the float is good and it's still not reading, there's obviously a problem with the electronics. So basically inside the sending unit, it looks like a Wheel of Fortune wheel. And it just moves up and down on a set of windings, and it reads the current at a certain level and then shoots it to the gauge. A lot of the times the gauges are fine. These gauges were built unbelievable. They're very strong gauges, and over the years, these gauges are really only meant for 6 volts. Over the years, people jumped the cars with 12 volts, and there's little points. If you look, there's a little contact right there. Let me see if I can show it to you. My camera's not good enough, but basically you could see there's one of the contacts, and you could see that's the gauge reads on those contacts. Now, over the years they corrode, whatever, so a lot of times the gauges don't read, but a lot of times they do. So the bottom line is if your gas gauge is not reading, it's usually a wiring problem, a grounding problem, or the sending unit has been sitting in basically fuel, which is liquid, and it rotted the insides of the sending unit themselves. So usually the gauges are fine. I mean, once in a while they're not, but a lot of times they are. So these are the different sending units. Now, Chrysler being, the company that they were a little wacky. So they picked certain numbers. Now, right here, that's 4678 P15. That's Dodge, 4678 Dodge. D24, that's DeSoto, 4678. Now, in 4678 Dodge, you'll notice I have 2 of the same ones. They switched. They went from 3-pole to 2-pole. So 48 Dodge uses a different sending unit than a 47 Dodge. Why they did it, I don't know. Maybe the people they were buying them from couldn't produce it. Usually when there's swings in the manufacturing, it was a supply issue. That's what I've seen, but I wasn't alive, 75 years ago. I can't really tell you the answer. And anybody who could is in the cemetery, so that's not going to happen. That's 42 Plymouth, and that's 4678 Chrysler. But now let's talk about the sending units. I don't want to be too lengthy, but these are the sending units. You can see, this one has a longer arm than this one, and that's because the tank is deeper. So the length of the arm is how deep or shallow the tank is, and then every sending unit has either, see, the reason that these sending units have two wires here is because on the back of the gauge, this is a 4678 Plymouth, this measures between one pole is 0 to half and the next pole is half to full. So this is an odd two pole gauge with a sending unit. So when you move to the 49 cars, it only has one terminal like this one. This one has the 4678 has two terminals, different sending unit. Just the way that they made the electronics. Right here is Dodge Truck. It's a single terminal, and that's how it's just a little longer because the truck tanks are a little deeper. Now, the electronics on all these sending units are different. So at certain numbers, at empty and full, they read different things. So if you were to take a single wire, let's say 49 sending unit for the cars, and work it in the truck, it probably wouldn't work because the way that they work the trucks, they had different ohm ranges. So let's say at full it was 100 and 0 was empty, which is not the case. I'm just giving you round numbers. That's why the gauges might read half full, 3/4 full when they show a certain amount. Now, that's the problem with the sending unit. So now you understand. Now people ask me, well, the 49 sending unit, which is this one, looks just like the Dodge Truck one. Why is this one more money or this one less money than this one? And the answer is, the more stuff we make in if you're going to sell 500 of the 49 sending units and you're going to sell 100 of the truck ones, it costs you basically the same amount of money. So people say to me, Mike, why is this one? It looks exactly the same, and I'm sure the electronics are very similar, and you can manipulate the electronics inside. Why is it so much more? And the answer is volume. If I have to make a certain amount and I'm only going to sell, some cars are slow sellers. So people say to me, this one is the 56. This fits 56 only. It's a 1 year only. And the ohm range on this is 0 to 100. At 0, it's full, and at 200 ohms, it's empty. So right now, it's 200 ohms. On 56, they did a 1 year only gauge. There's not that many 56 cars out there. So the cost, if you amortize the cost based on production versus how many 56 senders you're going to sell, the cost to make these is exactly the same. But the problem is my grandchildren are going to be selling the 56 ones because they just don't sell that well. So it's just a dollars and cents thing. I'm trying to explain to you how the sending units work, but basically, here's the 30s sending unit, just so you can see how it's different. Some mount with bolts on the flange. These mount with a lock ring. These have bolts also. But basically, all these units do is they talk to the gauge. You can't use these on 12 volts because these gauges were built for 6 volts. So people are like, can I buy your sending unit and go buy an aftermarket fuel gauge? And the answer is no, because the electronics inside have to read certain numbers, and these talk to each other. If they don't have the same numbers, it's never going to work. So that's just a quick little interview with the sending units, but I wanted to show you how it works. I know I'm being lengthy, but this is how it works, and it's a little complex, but that's what you need to know. The most important thing on a sending unit that you need to know, it has to be grounded properly, because these terminals are not grounds. These are what sends the signals to the gauge. The ground is actually the body of the sending unit. If the body of the sending unit is not ground, it's not going to work. So if your sending unit doesn't work, you either got bad electronics inside, the float's missing, could be the gauge, but it's highly, suspect, or you have a grounding problem. That's what I could tell you. I hope everyone has a blessed weekend. If you need Mopar parts for your antique Mopar, give me a call. I'll be glad to help you. Everyone have a wonderful day. And I hope I helped you understand a little bit about sending units. Everybody have a great one. Take care.